I never expected that day to change everything. It began like any other, with the usual routine at school. But then, out of nowhere, I got a call from a man named Woody. His voice was serious, and I felt a chill. He said there was a criminal case involving me, something about inappropriate behavior. I was stunned. I had no idea what he was talking about. My mind raced, trying to figure out how I could be involved in something so serious. I asked him if it was a joke, but he said it was not. Woody explained that they were investigating a case involving an adult and a minor, something about possible sexual activities or assault. As soon as he said that, I knew what he meant. The person in question was my class advisor during senior year. I couldn't believe it. I agreed to answer any questions, honestly, hoping this would clear up the confusion. For the next hour, Woody and his team asked me every question they could think of, again and again, trying to find a slip or a lie. I stayed calm and truthful. After an hour of tough questioning, I finally told them I had nothing to hide. I said, there was never a moment where Ms. X acted inappropriately around me. I meant every word. She was professional, always respectful. That seemed to satisfy them because they stopped asking questions and said they might contact me later. I was shaken but relieved. Woody stayed on the phone with me, offering support. He told me to hold my head high and that my honesty was appreciated. I hung up and tried to focus on my studies again. That Christmas break, I heard the news that shattered everything. Ms. X, my class advisor, was found guilty of having a relationship with a senior student. The student claimed it was consensual, but the law said otherwise. He was a minor. She lost her job, had to register as a sex offender, and served time in prison. People talked, rumors spread, and I felt angry and confused. I knew her, and the story didn't add up. The student who accused her was known for lying and bragging. I wished I could confront him. Life didn't stop. I went back to my routine, but the weight of the situation stayed with me. I thought about trust, justice, and how easily a life could be destroyed by a lie or a secret. Months later, I faced another difficult truth, one that cut even deeper. My husband, the man I loved, had done terrible things to my own sisters. I couldn't believe it when my younger sister told me. I felt lost, broken, and scared for her. The pain was unbearable, but I knew I had to act. I called the police, even though my heart trembled. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, reporting the man I married, someone I once trusted. I kept thinking of my sister's brave faces and knew I couldn't stay silent. The investigation began, and we all gave our statements. The officers were kind but clear. Without a confession or DNA evidence, it would be hard to convict him. The truth felt trapped, locked away from justice. I felt powerless, but stayed strong for my sisters, hoping that someday the law would catch up. In the months that followed, I separated from my husband. It was the only way to protect myself and my family. He never denied what he was accused of, but he begged me not to call the police. I still struggle with the pain and regret, but I know I did the right thing. My sisters went to counseling and slowly began to heal. Meanwhile, my ex moved on as if nothing happened, finding someone new, almost immediately. Sometimes, I wonder if he feels any guilt, but I have to keep moving forward. During this dark time, a light appeared unexpectedly. I met John, not his real name, a kind friend who helped me in ways I never expected. When I was struggling financially at university, he quietly supported me. Without ever telling me, he gave me chances to earn money through freelancing projects. I thought I was working for a client, but later, I found out John was behind it all. He just wanted to help me without making me feel weak. That kindness saved me in ways words can't describe. Years later, I still remember that generosity and friendship. John never asked for anything in return. When I graduated and landed my first job, He was the first person I wanted to celebrate with. At dinner, I realized how much he had sacrificed for me. When he left the table, I glanced at his phone and saw an email notification from me. The client was just him, pretending to be someone else. It was his secret, but I knew. That moment showed me what true friendship looks like. Life moved on, and so did my career. After 5 years at a company, I got an offer from a big multinational firm. Excited, I resigned the same day. HR called me to discuss my resignation politely, asking why I was leaving. I told them honestly, I didn't like the management. The conversation was calm, but soon after, my resource manager asked if I would reconsider if offered a chance to work on-site abroad. It sounded tempting, but I was unsure. I needed time to think. The decision wasn't easy. The next day, the resource manager called again. He said there was an urgent project abroad, and they wanted me to join. They needed someone immediately, and said I'd have to learn new skills quickly. They wanted me to take back my resignation so they could start my visa process. I felt pressured, but also scared. What if I took the risk and it didn't work out? What if the visa got rejected? I told them I needed a written guarantee that my resignation date wouldn't change if things fell through. They weren't sure if that was possible. That evening, I sat alone with a couple of beers, thinking deeply. I always dreamed of working abroad, but now the choice felt heavy. Should I stay and accept the challenge, or should I leave and keep my plans simple? I thought about the people I trusted, and finally, I called my brother. His advice was simple, but powerful. Stick to your decisions. That's what makes you strong. I also remembered a quote from a movie about saying no to bigger things, to grow stronger. The choice became clearer. On Monday, I told the resource manager I wouldn't take back my resignation. The uncertainty and pressure were too much. The other manager understood and said it was okay. Even after that, HR kept calling me with other offers, different projects, new technologies, and another chance for on-site work. They wanted me to change my mind, but I stayed firm. In the end, my last working day was set for mid-March. I thought I was ready to move on, but then everything changed. The whole country shut down because of the coronavirus pandemic. Suddenly, all travel stopped. The on-site work I was offered disappeared. It was a strange relief. I was glad I hadn't risked my resignation or my future for something uncertain. Life slowed down, and I had time to reflect on my choices. Sometimes, things don't happen as planned, but they happen as they should. I learned to trust the timing of life, even when it was hard to understand. After leaving the company, I felt free but also nervous about what was next. Job hunting during a pandemic was tough. Many companies were frozen, and opportunities were scarce. Still, I kept my head up. I reminded myself that every ending was a new beginning. I spent time improving my skills online, preparing for interviews, and reconnecting with old friends. It wasn't easy, but I kept moving forward. I learned that patience and persistence were as important as talent. One day, I got an email inviting me to interview with a startup. The role was different from what I expected, more challenging, but exciting. I spent days preparing, researching the company, and practicing answers. When the interview came, I felt nervous, but confident. I told my story honestly, shared my struggles and growth, and explained why I wanted to join their team. A few days later, they offered me the job. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to prove myself again. Starting at the new company was a whirlwind. The pace was fast, the learning curve steep, but I loved the challenge. I met smart, passionate people who inspired me every day. I worked hard to keep up and contribute. Slowly, I found my rhythm. Each small success built my confidence. The struggles of the past seemed distant, like a different life. I realized that resilience was more powerful than any setback. I was no longer just surviving. I was growing. Even with work going well, I couldn't forget the past. The pain of betrayal, the loss of trust, and the scars on my family's heart stayed with me. Sometimes, I felt overwhelmed by sadness, but I learned to talk about it with close friends and my counselor. Sharing my story helped me heal. I also started volunteering for organizations that support abuse survivors. Helping others gave me purpose and reminded me that even in darkness, there is light. One quiet evening, I received a message from an old acquaintance. She wanted to reconnect after hearing about my journey. We talked for hours, sharing memories and life updates. It felt good to rebuild old friendships. I realized that relationships, like life, need care and attention to grow. Holding on to grudges or regrets only held me back. Forgiving didn't mean forgetting, but freeing myself from the past. I was learning to live with hope again. As months passed, I focused on my dreams and goals. I saved money, planned future travels, and started thinking about continuing my education. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every challenge had taught me something valuable. I understood the importance of honesty, courage, and kindness, especially to myself. I knew there would be more obstacles ahead, but I felt ready. The story was still unfolding, and I was determined to write it with strength and grace. One morning, I woke up feeling different, lighter somehow. I realized I had been carrying so much weight from the past. I decided to start each day with a small habit, writing down 3 things I was grateful for. At first, it felt strange, but slowly it changed my outlook. Even small joys, like a sunny day or a kind smile, became important. This simple practice helped me focus on the good in life and gave me strength to face the hard days. Work continued to challenge me. I was learning new skills every week, and sometimes I doubted myself. But I reminded myself that nobody becomes perfect overnight. Mistakes were part of learning. My teammates were supportive, and we often helped each other. One day, my manager praised me for handling a difficult project well. That small recognition felt huge. It reminded me that progress, no matter how slow, is still progress. Outside of work, I started exploring hobbies again. I had forgotten how much I loved painting and writing. These activities became my safe space, where I could express feelings I couldn't always say out loud. Sometimes, painting a picture or writing a short story helped me heal in ways talking couldn't. I even joined a local art group online, where people shared their work and encouraged each other. It felt like a new community. One day, I found an old photo album from my childhood. Looking through the pictures brought back memories, some happy, some sad. I saw myself as a kid, full of hope and dreams. It reminded me that those dreams were still inside me, waiting to be found again. I decided to make a list of goals I wanted to achieve, both big and small. Writing them down made them feel real and gave me a sense of purpose. My family was still healing from everything that had happened. We had good days and bad days. Sometimes, we would argue or feel distant, but slowly, we were learning to talk openly again. My parents were proud of how strong my sisters were, and I was proud of them too. We all had scars, but love was helping us grow. I knew that healing wasn't a straight path, but we were walking it together. One afternoon, I received a surprise call from an old teacher. She wanted to check in and see how I was doing. Talking to her reminded me of the good times in school and the dreams I had back then. She encouraged me to keep learning and never give up. It felt nice to reconnect with someone who believed in me. Sometimes, kindness from unexpected places can lift your spirit in ways you don't expect. As time went on, I noticed I was becoming more confident in social situations. Before, I used to avoid groups and big events because I felt awkward or anxious. Now, I was starting to enjoy meeting new people and sharing my stories. I even gave a small talk at a community event about overcoming challenges. It was scary, but empowering. I realized that vulnerability can be a strength, not a weakness. One evening, I sat down with my journal and wrote about my journey, the pain, the growth, and the hope. Writing helped me see how far I had come. I understood that life is full of ups and downs, but what matters is how we respond. I felt proud of myself for not giving up, for choosing to heal and move forward. It was a quiet victory, but it meant everything to me. A few weeks later, I got invited to join a mentorship program. The idea was to help young people who faced struggles like mine. I accepted right away. Helping others gave me a new sense of purpose. I shared my experiences and listened to theirs. We learned from each other. It was powerful to see how courage could grow when people support one another. I felt grateful to be part of something bigger than myself. Looking back, I realized that my story was not just about pain and loss, but also about resilience and hope. Every challenge had taught me something important about myself. I was learning to trust my instincts, value my worth, and believe in a better future. The journey was far from over, but I knew I was ready for whatever came next. With every step, I was becoming the person I wanted to be. One morning, I woke up to an email from a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. She wrote that she had been thinking about me and wanted to reconnect. At first, I felt nervous about reopening old chapters, but I also felt curious. We agreed to meet at a small cafe nearby. Seeing her again brought back memories, but also showed me how much we had both changed. It felt good to rebuild a friendship that had once meant a lot to me. As we talked over coffee, we shared stories about our lives since we last met. She told me about her struggles and triumphs, and I shared some of mine. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone in facing hardships. Our conversation reminded me how important it is to have people who listen without judgment. Sometimes, simply being heard can heal wounds that words alone cannot fix. After our meeting, I felt inspired to reach out to more old friends and family members. I realized that healing didn't mean isolating myself, but rather opening up to those who cared. Slowly, I rebuilt bridges that had been broken by time or pain. Not all connections were easy to restore, but even small steps toward forgiveness and understanding felt like progress. One afternoon at work, I was given a new project that seemed overwhelming at first. It required skills I hadn't fully mastered. Yet, instead of panicking, I decided to take it as a challenge to grow. I made a plan, broke the work into smaller steps, and asked for help when needed. Bit by bit, I gained confidence. When I finally completed the project successfully, I felt proud of my determination. At home, I started a small garden on my balcony. Caring for plants became a calming routine. Watching seeds grow into flowers or vegetables taught me patience and hope. It reminded me that growth, like healing, takes time and nurturing. Sometimes, I would sit outside just to breathe fresh air and feel connected to something bigger than myself. One day, I found a letter I had written to myself during a difficult time. Reading it was like hearing my own voice from the past, full of fear but also courage. I realized how far I had come since then. That letter was a reminder to keep going, no matter how hard things seemed. I folded it carefully and decided to write a new letter for my future self. Filled with hope and encouragement, a few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a local school about resilience and making good choices. At first, I was nervous. Talking in front of so many young people felt intimidating. But when I began to share my story honestly, I saw their faces light up with understanding and hope. It felt powerful to use my experiences to inspire others. That day, I learned that our struggles can become strengths when shared. In my personal life, I started dating again. I was cautious at first, afraid of being hurt, but I reminded myself that opening my heart was part of healing. I met someone, kind and patient, who respected my past and supported my growth. We took things slowly, building trust, step by step. It was a new beginning, filled with possibility and gentle care. One evening, while watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of peace. The colors in the sky reminded me that life was always changing, sometimes bright, sometimes dark, but always beautiful in its own way. I understood that healing didn't mean forgetting the past, but learning to live with it and still find joy. That moment was a gift I promised to hold on to. As the months passed, I kept writing in my journal every day. Recording my thoughts, dreams, and challenges helped me stay connected to myself. I looked back on old entries and saw the progress I had made. Even on days when I felt weak, the journal reminded me of my strength. It became a trusted friend, always there to listen without judgment. One morning, I woke up feeling unusually hopeful. The dark cloud that often hung over me seemed lighter. I realized that little by little, all the hard work I'd done was starting to pay off. My thoughts were clearer, and I was more patient with myself. It felt like waking up from a long, restless sleep. I decided to celebrate by taking a walk outside, breathing in fresh air, and letting the sunshine fill me with warmth. During my walk, I stumbled upon a small community center hosting an art class. I hadn't painted since I was a kid, but something about the colors and brushes called to me. I signed up, not knowing what to expect. The first time I held a paintbrush again, I felt nervous but excited. As the colors blended on the canvas, I found an unexpected way to express feelings I couldn't put into words. The art classes became a weekly ritual. Each session was like a little escape from daily worries. Painting allowed me to explore my emotions safely and creatively. Sometimes I painted my fears, sometimes my hopes. Sharing my work with the group helped me see that others had their own struggles too. It was comforting to feel part of a community where no one judged but everyone supported each other. One day, a woman in the class shared her story of overcoming addiction. Hearing her brave journey inspired me deeply. We talked after class, and I realized how powerful it is to connect through vulnerability. Opening up about pain, instead of hiding it, creates space for healing. That conversation stayed with me, encouraging me to be honest with myself and others about my own experiences. Around this time, I started volunteering at a local shelter. Giving back to others in need gave me a sense of purpose. It reminded me that despite the pain I had endured, I could still make a positive difference. Helping people who were struggling reminded me that everyone has battles, visible or hidden. The gratitude I saw in their eyes made me feel less alone and more connected to the world. One chilly evening, while volunteering, I met a young woman who reminded me of myself a few years ago, scared and unsure. We talked for hours about dreams and fears. I shared what I had learned about resilience and hope. It felt like passing on a torch, lighting the way for someone else. That night, I went home feeling grateful for how far I had come and hopeful about the future at work. I faced new challenges as my responsibilities increased. Sometimes I felt overwhelmed, but I remembered to take things one step at a time. I set small goals and celebrated every success, no matter how tiny. Gradually, I became more confident in my skills. My colleagues noticed my growth and started trusting me with important tasks. It felt good to prove to myself that I was capable. One weekend, I took a solo trip to the countryside. Being alone with nature gave me space to think and breathe without distractions. I hiked through forests, listened to birds, and watched sunsets in silence. The beauty and quiet reminded me that life could be simple and peaceful. I returned feeling refreshed and more connected to myself, ready to face whatever came next. Back home, I started practicing meditation and mindfulness. At first, it was hard to quiet my busy mind, but with patience, I learned to focus on the present moment. This practice helped reduce my anxiety and gave me tools to manage stress. It was like learning to anchor myself during storms. Over time, Mindfulness became part of my daily routine, a source of calm I could return to any time. One day, while journaling, I realized I hadn't thought about the past trauma in a long time. It wasn't because I forgot, but because I had healed enough to carry it without pain ruling my life. That felt like a victory. I knew the journey wasn't over, but I was no longer trapped by it. I could finally look forward with hope and confidence, ready to write the next chapter of my story. Life kept moving forward, and with each day, I felt stronger. I noticed small changes in how I treated myself, with kindness instead of harsh judgment. This shift didn't happen overnight, but little by little, I stopped being my own worst enemy. I began to understand that healing is not about perfection, but about progress. Every time I stumbled, I reminded myself it was okay to fall, as long as I got back up. My relationships also began to improve. I started reconnecting with old friends I had pushed away during my darkest moments. They welcomed me back with open arms, showing patience and love. I realized that I didn't have to face life alone. Building a support system helped me feel safer and more hopeful. It was reassuring to know that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness, but of courage. Work became a place of growth, not just a source of stress. I learned to speak up when I needed support, and to set boundaries when things got too overwhelming. This was hard for me, because I was used to pushing through pain silently. But over time, I saw how these boundaries actually improved my performance and well-being. It felt good to take care of myself while still doing my best. One afternoon, I received an unexpected message from someone I hadn't talked to in years. It was from John, the friend who had helped me so selflessly during college. Reading his words brought tears to my eyes. He reminded me of how far I had come and how proud he was of me. That simple message made me realize that I had a circle of people who believed in me, even when I doubted myself. Encouraged by John's message, I reached out to a few old friends, rebuilding connections I had lost. These conversations were sometimes awkward, but they were honest and healing. We shared memories, laughter, and sometimes tears. It was comforting to know that despite the changes time brought, true friendship could survive. These relationships became a new source of strength, reminding me that I was never truly alone. With renewed energy, I started setting bigger goals for my future. I wanted to challenge myself professionally and personally. I enrolled in courses to learn new skills and applied for jobs that excited me. Though fear tried to creep in, I pushed forward anyway. Each step outside my comfort zone made me feel more capable and alive. I discovered that growth comes from facing fears, not avoiding them. One evening, while working late, I got a call from my sister. She sounded happier and more confident than before. Hearing her voice lifted my spirits instantly. She told me about her progress in counseling and new friends she was making. It reminded me that healing isn't just personal, it affects everyone around us. Supporting each other through pain and growth can create powerful bonds. Inspired by my sister's strength, I decided to share parts of my story publicly. I wasn't ready to tell everything, but I wanted to help others who might be struggling. Writing blog posts and speaking at small events gave me a sense of purpose. It was scary to be vulnerable, but I felt a deep satisfaction knowing that my experiences might encourage someone else to keep going. As I continued to heal, I realized forgiveness was a big part of the process. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving myself. Holding on to guilt and anger had kept me stuck. Letting go didn't mean forgetting what happened, but freeing myself from the heavy burden of resentment. This was one of the hardest lessons, but also one of the most liberating. I finally felt ready to move on without hate in my heart. Looking back, I saw how much I had grown from the scared, uncertain person I used to be. The pain still lived inside me, but it no longer controlled my life. I was becoming someone who could face challenges with courage and kindness. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt hopeful about the road ahead. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing I was strong enough to handle it. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I realized that every step I took toward healing was making me stronger. Even when things got tough, I knew I could handle it. I started my day with a small routine meditation and journaling that helped me focus and stay calm. These simple habits gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in a long time. At work, I found myself more confident speaking up during meetings. Before, I would stay quiet, afraid my ideas weren't good enough. Now, I noticed my voice mattered, and my colleagues listened. This small change surprised me and made me feel more connected to the team. It also reminded me that sometimes the hardest battles we fight are inside our own minds. One afternoon, while having coffee with a new friend, I shared a little about my past. It was scary to open up, but their response was full of understanding and kindness. I realized I didn't have to hide my story to be accepted. This moment helped me accept myself more, flaws and all. Being honest felt like a new kind of freedom I hadn't experienced before. My sister and I started spending more time together, doing small things like cooking or going for walks. These moments helped us rebuild trust and create new happy memories. Sometimes, she would open up about her fears, and I would listen without judgment. Our bond grew stronger, reminding me that healing often happens in small, quiet ways. I began volunteering at a local support group for survivors of trauma. Helping others gave me a sense of purpose and community. Hearing other people's stories made me feel less alone in my experience. We shared struggles and victories, and I realized that pain could connect us in powerful ways. This work became an important part of my healing journey. One day, I got an unexpected call from the old college professor who had supported me years ago. Hearing their voice brought back memories of tough times and resilience. They reminded me that I had always been stronger than I believed. Their encouragement reignited my motivation to keep pushing forward and not let fear hold me back. With newfound courage, I started exploring hobbies I had abandoned long ago. Painting and writing became my creative outlets, expressing my feelings through art helped me understand myself better. Sometimes, the colors and words that came out surprised me, revealing emotions I hadn't noticed before. This creative process felt like therapy without words. As the months passed, I noticed how my perspective on life was changing. I focused less on past pain and more on future possibilities. I started dreaming again, small dreams at first, like traveling or learning a new skill. Each goal, no matter how small, gave me something positive to work toward. It felt good to have hope again. One evening, I sat quietly reflecting on my journey. I realized that healing isn't a straight path, it's full of ups and downs. Some days are harder than others, and setbacks happen. But what matters is that I keep moving forward, no matter how slow. This understanding gave me patience and compassion for myself I had never had before. The most important lesson I learned was that I am not defined by my trauma. I am more than what happened to me. I am a person capable of love, joy, and growth. This truth gave me strength to face each new day with courage. Though the past will always be a part of me, it no longer controls my story. I am ready to write the next chapter. One morning, I woke up feeling a bit nervous but excited. I had decided to meet with a therapist again, someone new who could help me dig deeper into my feelings. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew it was a step I needed to take. Walking into the office, I felt a mix of hope and fear, but I reminded myself that growth often happens outside comfort zones. The therapist was kind and patient. She listened without interrupting and asked questions that made me think. Sometimes it was hard to talk about the past, but I felt safe. Opening up slowly felt like peeling back layers of pain, but also layers of strength I hadn't recognized. Each session left me feeling lighter and more understood. Outside the therapy room, I began to notice small changes in how I viewed myself. I stopped blaming myself for things I couldn't control and started forgiving myself for mistakes I made in the past. This forgiveness wasn't easy, it took time, but it was necessary for me to heal. I realized forgiveness was not about forgetting but freeing myself from the burden of anger. At work, I found new opportunities to lead projects. My confidence was growing, and colleagues started trusting me with important tasks. I was proud of the progress I made, knowing it came from hard work and resilience. Every success, no matter how small, felt like proof that I was capable of overcoming challenges and moving forward. One weekend I decided to visit a quiet beach nearby. The sound of the waves and the fresh air gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Sitting on the sand, I let my thoughts wander and allowed myself to dream freely. I realized I was ready to set new goals and chase after happiness without fear holding me back. During a family dinner, I noticed my parents' faces softening when we talked about my healing process. They shared their own feelings of pain and regret, which I hadn't heard before. This moment of vulnerability brought us closer together. We promised to support each other more and communicate openly, helping each other heal in different ways. I began journaling every day, capturing thoughts, feelings, and small victories. Writing helped me track my progress and see how far I had come. Some days were harder than others, but putting my emotions on paper made them feel less overwhelming. It became a ritual of self-love and reflection, reminding me to celebrate each step forward. One evening, I reconnected with an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. We shared stories, laughed, and caught up on life. Their support reminded me how important relationships are in healing. I realized that surrounding myself with people who care was just as important as working on myself. This friendship brought new light and joy into my life. At work, a big project required me to travel to a new city. I felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety, but reminded myself that growth often comes from facing fears. The trip went better than expected. I met new people and learned new skills. This experience boosted my confidence and reminded me that stepping out of my comfort zone can lead to amazing opportunities. As I lay in bed one night, I thought about how much my life had changed over the past months. From pain and fear to hope and strength, my journey was far from over, but I felt ready. I promised myself to keep moving forward, to be kind to myself, and to never lose sight of the person I was becoming. The future felt bright and full of possibilities. I started waking up earlier, giving myself quiet moments before the day began. Those early mornings became my time to reflect and plan. It wasn't easy at first, but the calmness helped me feel more in control. I learned to breathe deeply and set small goals for the day. These habits gave me a sense of peace that was missing before. One day, I received a message from an unexpected source, someone I hadn't talked to in years. It was awkward at first, but we slowly rebuilt trust. That reconnection reminded me how people change and grow, just like me. It was proof that even broken connections could be mended with time and honesty. I found myself smiling more and laughing freely. It was like a heavy cloud had lifted. Sometimes, when old memories tried to creep back, I reminded myself how far I had come. Those memories didn't define me anymore. Instead, I used them as lessons to protect myself and to appreciate my strength. Work became a place where I could express my ideas and contribute meaningfully. I volunteered for a leadership role in a new initiative, pushing myself to face challenges head-on. Each success boosted my self-esteem, and failures became stepping stones rather than reasons to give up. This mindset shift was crucial in my recovery. I started exploring hobbies I had abandoned long ago: painting, reading, and even cooking new recipes. These activities brought joy and a sense of accomplishment. They reminded me that self-care wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Taking time for myself helped me reconnect with my passions and dreams. One afternoon, I went for a walk in the park and noticed a group of kids playing. Their laughter was infectious. Watching them, I realized how much I wanted to protect innocence and joy in the world. It fueled a new desire to volunteer at a local youth center, to give back and help others who might be struggling. The therapist and I began working on building healthy boundaries. I learned how to say no and prioritize my well-being without guilt. Setting limits was hard at first, especially with people I cared about, but it made me feel stronger and more respected. Boundaries became a shield that helped me stay safe emotionally. During a family gathering, I finally spoke openly about my past struggles. It was scary, but their support was overwhelming. Sharing my story helped break down walls of silence and shame. It reminded me that vulnerability creates connection, not weakness. I felt lighter and more accepted than ever before. One evening, a friend invited me to a small concert. The music was soothing and uplifting. Being around people who enjoyed life reminded me that joy is still possible after pain. I danced, sang along, and allowed myself to fully experience the moment. That night, I promised to seek happiness wherever I could find it. Lying in bed after that concert, I reflected on my journey. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every tear, every victory shaped who I was becoming. I realized that healing is not a straight path, but a series of ups and downs. I embraced the uncertainty and felt ready to keep moving forward, no matter what came next. The next morning, I woke up feeling a new sense of hope. I decided to write down my goals and dreams, no matter how big or small. Putting them on paper made them feel real and achievable. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to try. This was my fresh start. I started reading books about resilience and healing. Each story inspired me and gave me new tools to cope. I realized I wasn't alone in my struggles. Others had faced darkness and found their way out. Their courage gave me strength to keep fighting my own battles. One day, I met someone new who treated me with kindness and respect. It was different from what I had known before. Their patience and understanding helped me slowly open my heart again. I didn't rush anything. I just enjoyed the feeling of being valued and safe. At work, I faced a difficult project that tested my skills and patience. Instead of giving up, I reminded myself of how far I had come. I broke the task into smaller steps and tackled each one carefully. The sense of accomplishment I felt when it was done was incredible. I joined a support group where people shared their stories of overcoming trauma. Listening to others gave me comfort and new perspectives. Sharing my own experiences, even when it was hard, helped me heal and connect with people who truly understood. Sometimes, old fears tried to pull me back. On those days, I practiced mindfulness and meditation. Focusing on the present moment helped me quiet my mind and ease anxiety. These simple techniques became powerful tools in managing stress and staying grounded. I started volunteering at a shelter for victims of abuse. Helping others gave me purpose and reminded me that my pain could be used to make a difference. Seeing their bravery inspired me to keep moving forward and never give up on healing. A close friend surprised me with a trip to the mountains. The fresh air and beautiful views gave me a chance to recharge and reflect. Being surrounded by nature reminded me of life's endless possibilities and the peace that can come from letting go of the past. I began journaling daily, writing down my thoughts and feelings. This practice helped me process emotions and track my progress. Some days were harder than others, but putting words on paper made everything feel more manageable. It was like talking to a friend who always listened. As months passed, I noticed a change in myself. I was more confident, calmer, and more hopeful. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled me. I had built a new foundation based on honesty, courage, and self-love. This new me was ready for whatever life had in store. One evening, I received a call that shook me deeply. It was about someone from my past, someone I thought I had left behind forever. The news brought a wave of emotions: fear, anger, confusion. I wasn't sure how to respond, but I knew ignoring it wouldn't help. I had to face it head on. I spent the next few days thinking about what this meant for me. Could I handle reopening old wounds? Or was this an opportunity to finally close a painful chapter? I talked to my closest friends for advice, and they encouraged me to trust myself and move forward carefully, deciding to take control. I reached out to a counselor who specialized in trauma. Talking to a professional gave me tools I didn't have before. I learned how to set boundaries, recognize triggers, and protect my mental space. It felt empowering to have someone guide me through the storm. At work, things became hectic. A major deadline was approaching, and the pressure was mounting. I almost wanted to avoid responsibilities, but I remembered how much I had grown. Instead, I focused on what I could control, prioritized tasks, and took short breaks to recharge. One afternoon, while walking home, I stumbled upon an old diary from my teenage years. Flipping through the pages, I saw dreams and fears from a different time. It was strange to see how much I had changed, and how some feelings had remained the same. The diary reminded me of my journey. Inspired, I began writing a letter to my younger self. I told her about the strength she would find, the people who would support her, and the happiness that awaited. Writing those words helped me forgive past mistakes and embrace the person I had become. A new friendship blossomed unexpectedly. This person was patient and kind, but more importantly, they accepted me without judgment. We shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments. It was refreshing to connect with someone who truly understood me without trying to change anything. I noticed my confidence growing in small ways. I started speaking up more during meetings and sharing ideas that I had kept to myself before. Each time I did, I felt a little braver. It was like reclaiming parts of myself I had hidden for too long. However, healing wasn't always a straight path. Some days, old memories would flood back unexpectedly. On those days, I allowed myself to feel the pain, but reminded myself that it would pass. I practiced self-compassion and reached out to friends when I needed support. One weekend, I took a solo trip to a nearby city. Exploring new places alone was both scary and exciting. I enjoyed the freedom to make my own choices and reflect on how far I had come. It was a small adventure, but had marked a big step in my personal growth. During my trip, I met a few strangers who shared pieces of their lives with me. Their stories were different, but carried similar struggles and hopes. It reminded me that everyone is fighting their own battles, and kindness can make a huge difference in someone's day. Back home, I felt more determined to set goals for myself. I wrote down what I wanted to achieve in the next year, both personal and professional. Having a clear plan helped me focus and gave me something positive to work toward. Even when things felt uncertain, I started waking up earlier each day to make time for exercise and meditation. At first it was difficult, but gradually I noticed my mood improving and my mind feeling clearer. These small habits became anchors in my routine that supported my mental and physical health. Work became more challenging as the company faced unexpected changes. There was talk of layoffs and restructuring. I felt anxious but tried to stay adaptable. I reminded myself that I couldn't control everything and focused on doing my best in each moment. One evening, I was invited to a community event where people shared their creative projects. Listening to their stories inspired me to start a personal blog. Writing became another way to express myself and process my thoughts. It felt good to have a creative outlet. Through blogging, I connected with others who had similar experiences. We supported each other online, sharing advice and encouragement. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone and that my voice could help someone else feel understood. A close family member reached out after months of silence. We had a difficult past, but I decided to listen and try to rebuild our relationship slowly. It wasn't easy, and trust had to be earned again, but it felt like an important step toward healing. During this time, I also learned the importance of saying no. I realized I had often stretched myself too thin to please others. Setting boundaries was scary at first, but it gave me space to focus on my well-being and prioritize what truly mattered. I faced a setback at work when a project I led didn't meet expectations. I felt embarrassed and doubted my abilities, but instead of giving up, I asked for feedback and used it to improve. This experience taught me resilience and the value of learning from mistakes. One evening, I reflected on my journey so far. Despite the hardships, I had grown stronger and more so. I realized that healing is not about forgetting the past, but about accepting it and choosing to move forward with hope. The blog I started began gaining more attention. People started commenting on how my words helped them feel seen and less alone. That made me realize I was doing something meaningful. I wasn't just telling my story, I was helping others tell theirs too. It gave me a purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. For once, I didn't feel like my past was only painful. It became something useful, something that helped others grow. The more I wrote, the more I healed. I started to believe that something good could come out of everything I had gone through. As time went on, I decided to take a bigger step. I reached out to a local support group to volunteer. They worked with people who had experienced betrayal, trauma, or mental health struggles. At first, I didn't know what to say or how to help, but simply being present, listening, and sharing my story helped others open up too. I didn't have all the answers, but sometimes people just need to feel heard. That experience taught me that healing is a circle we help each other rise, even when we're still trying to stand ourselves. Volunteering became a regular part of my week. I met many people who had been through things even more painful than I could imagine. Yet, they still came back every week, fighting to live better lives. Their strength inspired me more than any motivational quote ever could. I started seeing the beauty in struggle. Pain was still there, but so was hope. We laughed, cried, and grew together. The support group became a second family to me. I didn't feel as alone anymore. That human connection, those shared moments, reminded me what life is truly about. One day after a support meeting, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, an old friend from school. We were close once, but life pulled us in different directions. She asked how I had been, and I told her the truth, not the polished version. She shared her own struggles too. We ended up talking for hours, sitting in a quiet cafe, swapping stories and emotions like no time had passed. That meeting reminded me that some friendships can be paused, but not erased. We promised to stay in touch, and this time, we meant it. That renewed friendship sparked something new in me. I realized I had been holding back from connecting with others out of fear of being hurt, abandoned, or misunderstood. But relationships are messy, and that's okay. I couldn't protect myself from all pain, but I could allow joy in, too. I slowly started reaching out to other old friends, some of whom I had ignored during my darkest days. Some responded warmly, others didn't, but I felt proud of myself for trying. Rebuilding isn't always about the outcome, it's about the courage to try again. A few months later, my therapist suggested I try public speaking. The thought terrified me. What if I froze? What if people judged me? But a part of me felt ready. I had told my story to individuals, but now it was time to stand up and tell it to a room. My first talk was at a community college event about healing from emotional trauma. My hands shook, my heart raced, but I spoke. People clapped, some cried, and others stayed after to thank me. That moment was life-changing. I saw how far I had come. That one event led to more opportunities. Soon, I was speaking at workshops, writing articles, and joining panels. It wasn't about fame or recognition, it was about making an impact. I still had bad days, and sometimes the old pain crept back in, but now I had tools to handle it. I had purpose. The version of me who once sat in silence, afraid and broken, wouldn't have believed how far we had come. And yet, here I was, using my voice, building something beautiful from all that had once been shattered. One evening, after a long day of volunteering and writing, I sat in my apartment with a cup of tea and thought about everything. I thought about Megan, about how her choices had impacted me, and about how I no longer felt tied to that chapter. Forgiving her didn't mean forgetting or excusing, but it meant I no longer carried her actions like a weight. She was part of my past, but I was shaping my future. And in that quiet moment, I finally felt free. Healing had taken time, but it had been worth every second. With the help of my blog readers and the support group, I started planning something bigger, podcast. I wanted to create a space where people could share their stories and feel safe. Doing so, I knew not everyone could come to support groups, but maybe they could listen and feel less alone. I worked hard on the first few episodes, interviewing friends and survivors. The podcast wasn't perfect, but it was real, raw, honest, and the messages I received from listeners confirmed I was on the right path. Helping others helped me, too. A full year had passed since I started this journey of healing. Looking back, I barely recognized the person I once was. I still had the same name, the same memories, but I had changed. I was no longer surviving, day by day. I was living with intention, with meaning. I had taken pain and transformed it into strength. And though the road was long and full of detours, I had made it this far. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I also knew this. I had the tools, the strength, and the heart to keep going. After launching the podcast, I began receiving messages from people across the country. Some were survivors of toxic relationships. Others were just looking for someone who understood. Their words touched me deeply. One person told me they were about to give up, but my story gave them hope. That message made me cry. I realized my voice mattered. For so long, I felt like nothing I said would ever make a difference. Now, strangers were telling me my story helped them heal. That made all the pain I went through feel a little more bearable, maybe even worth it. One afternoon, I received an invitation from a mental health awareness nonprofit. They wanted me to speak at their annual conference. I was surprised, honestly. A year ago, I was struggling to even get out of bed. Now, people saw me as a voice for healing. I was nervous, but I accepted. When the day arrived, I wore the same blue shirt I had on the day I reported Megan. It reminded me how far I had come. When I stood on stage, I took a deep breath, looked at the audience, and started with, "This is where everything changed." The room was silent as I spoke. I told them about Megan, the stolen money, the threats, the lies, and how it all nearly broke me. But I also told them about the support group, the blog, and the kindness I received from strangers. I ended with a message. You are not what happened to you. You are who you choose to become after. When I finished, people stood up and clapped. Some hugged me after. That moment was something I'll never forget. It felt like closure, not just on the pain, but on who I used to be. After the conference, I started getting more speaking offers. I didn't say yes to everything, but I picked the ones that felt right. Each time I shared my story, I healed a little more. It was like I was slowly rewriting the ending to something that had once felt like a nightmare. I also started working with a counselor who specialized in trauma recovery. Even though I'd come far, I knew there were still wounds that needed attention. Healing isn't a one-time thing. It's a journey, and I was still on that path, learning more every day. One day, I saw Megan's name pop up on a college alumni forum. I hadn't seen or heard anything about her in a long time. My heart raced a little, but I didn't panic. Instead, I just stared at her name for a minute, then closed the page. I didn't feel anger or fear anymore, just distance. That chapter was closed, and I didn't need to reopen it. It felt powerful to realize that she no longer had control over my emotions. I had grown, healed, and moved forward. She was part of my story, but no longer part of me. Not long after, I decided to take a break from everything. The blog, the podcast, the speaking, just for a while. I needed time to reconnect with myself, not as a survivor, not as a speaker, but simply as a person. I traveled to a quiet town near the mountains, stayed in a small cabin, and spent my days reading, writing in a journal, and walking through the woods. It was peaceful. I didn't need to be strong or inspiring there. I just needed to be. That time alone reminded me that healing also comes from stillness and silence. In the cabin, I wrote a letter to my younger self. I told them how proud I was. I told them we made it. I wrote about all the times I wanted to give up but didn't. I promised that I'd keep moving forward, not just for me but for everyone who ever felt lost, scared, or broken. Writing that letter felt like putting a final piece in a long puzzle. I cried after I sealed it. It was like I had finally made peace with everything I had been through. I was no longer running from the past. When I returned from my cabin retreat, I felt lighter. I reopened my podcast but made a change. I started inviting guests to share their own stories. It became a space for many voices, not just mine. I listened to stories of loss, betrayal, strength, and recovery. Every episode reminded me that pain connects us, but so does healing. We don't need to carry our struggles alone. The podcast grew in popularity, and listeners thanked me for creating such a safe space. I wasn't just telling stories anymore. I was creating a community that felt more meaningful than anything before. As months passed, I started getting letters from college students who had heard my story. Some were facing situations like mine. Others were just scared to speak up. I responded to each one personally, offering words of support and reminding them they had power. It felt strange, being someone others looked up to, but I took that role seriously. I wanted them to know that no matter how dark it gets, there is always light ahead. Sometimes, we just need someone to remind us. I became that someone, and in doing so, I reminded myself too. Looking back now, I still feel amazed at how far I've come. There was a time I thought my life was over, that I'd never recover from what happened. But I did. Slowly, painfully, and with a lot of help. I turned brokenness into purpose. I found strength in places I never expected. Most of all, I learned to forgive not just Megan, but myself. For staying too long, for trusting the wrong person, for doubting my worth. I learned that we're all just trying to find our way. And sometimes, the hardest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. Even though I had forgiven Megan in my heart, I didn't forget. I didn't forget how it felt to be betrayed by someone I trusted. But forgiveness wasn't about her, it was about freeing myself. I didn't want to carry that anger anymore. Holding on to hate only made me feel small. Letting it go gave me space to grow. I started focusing on my own dreams, like writing a book about everything I had gone through. It felt scary, but also exciting. I knew my story could help someone else, and that gave it a greater purpose. The process of writing the book was harder than I thought. Every chapter I wrote brought back old memories. Some made me cry, others made me smile. I included everything, the good, the bad, and the lessons I learned. I wanted people to see that healing isn't perfect. It's messy, slow, and full of ups and downs. But it's worth it. I wrote late at night, sometimes falling asleep with my laptop open. But I didn't stop. This was my way of reclaiming my voice. I wanted to be the narrator of my own life, Not a victim, but a survivor. When I finished the first draft, I felt nervous. Would people even care about my story? Would they judge me? I sent it to a small publisher who specialized in memoirs. To my surprise, they loved it. They said my voice felt honest and real. They offered to publish it. I couldn't believe it. Something I had written, something born from pain, was going to become a real book. I felt proud, not just for getting published, but for never giving up. That version of me, the one who cried on the dorm room floor, would never believe this was possible. The book's release date was set for the fall. I called it What She Took, What I Found. It was about more than just Megan. It was about loss, truth, and the strength we don't know we have until we need it. When the book finally hit the shelves, I walked into a bookstore and found it sitting there with my name on the cover. My heart skipped. I took a photo and sent it to my family and closest friends. Their replies made me tear up. I had turned my deepest pain into something meaningful that mattered. After the book came out, more opportunities followed. Podcasts, interviews, even a short segment on a local news channel. But I stayed grounded. I remembered who I was before all this. I still did my laundry on Sundays, still took long walks to clear my mind. I didn't want to lose the quiet strength I had found through healing. Fame or recognition wasn't the goal. Connection was. If one person read my book and felt seen, that was enough. The best part was hearing from readers who said, "You told my story too." That kind of connection is priceless. One day, I got a letter in the mail. There was no return address. Inside was a short note. "I know I hurt you more than I can ever say I'm sorry. I hope you found peace." There was no name, but I knew it was from Megan. I sat with the letter for a while. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. I had already moved on. Whatever guilt she carried was hers to carry now. My journey had taken me far beyond her shadow. Later that evening, I burned the letter. Not out of hate, but as a way of letting it go for good. Watching the flames eat up the paper felt symbolic. I was finally closing that chapter with no loose ends. I stood outside, the wind soft on my face, and smiled. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. I wasn't defined by what had happened. I was defined by what I had done with it. That's something Megan or anyone could never take from me. That night, I slept peacefully, like someone who had nothing left to fear or prove. Years passed, and life moved on. I changed cities, started teaching creative writing part-time, and began working on a second book. This one wasn't about pain. It was about love, growth, and starting over. I found joy in the little things. Again, morning coffee, rainy days, quiet bookstores. People sometimes asked me if I ever missed Megan. I always said no. What I missed was the version of myself I lost while with her. But I had found that person again, stronger, wiser, kinder, and more importantly, free. My past was behind me, and the future looked bright. Sometimes, I think about the people who supported me back then: my RA, my therapist, Jimmy, the student lawyer. I owe them more than I can say. They believed me when others doubted me. They showed up when I needed it most. Every year, I send Jimmy a message on LinkedIn just to say thanks. He always replies with a smile emoji and a thumbs up. It's a small tradition, but it means a lot. It reminds me that I wasn't alone, and I never will be. No matter how dark things get, there's always someone willing to walk beside you. Now, when I look back at everything, I don't feel broken anymore. I feel proud. Proud that I stood up for myself. Proud that I kept going when things felt impossible. Proud that I chose to heal. That's the message I try to share with others. Your story doesn't end where the pain begins. It keeps going, and you get to decide how it's told. I used to think I was just a victim, but now I know better. I'm a survivor, a writer, a friend, and someone who turned rock bottom into the solid ground I now stand on in the years that followed. I started speaking at schools and universities about mental health, healthy relationships, and personal safety. Sharing my story in person was different than writing it, was raw, immediate, and sometimes scary. But every time I finished a talk, at least one person came up to say, "Thank you." I needed to hear that. That made it worth it. I wasn't just healing, I was helping others heal too. My pain had become a tool, not a weight. I began to see that maybe everything I had gone through had led me exactly where I was meant to be. One day, after a seminar, a student handed me a note. Inside it said, "I was in an abusive relationship too. I never told anyone, but after hearing you speak, I think I'm ready to get help." I cried that night not out of sadness, but because I saw how powerful truth could be. Sometimes, just being honest can save someone's life. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be real. And real is something Megan had never been. But I had found my voice again, and no one could ever silence it. Sometimes I visited the old campus, just to walk by the dorm where it all happened. The building looked the same, but I was not. I stood outside the door Megan once tried to break down, and I realized it no longer had power over me. I had walked through that fire and come out stronger. That spot used to remind me of fear, but now it reminded me of how far I had come. I even smiled a little. Life is strange like that. It brings you full circle, just to show you how much you've grown. Eventually, I met someone new. Not someone flashy or loud, but kind, quiet, and respectful. They knew my story and didn't run from it. Instead, they listened. They made me feel safe again, and that was something I hadn't felt in a long time. We took things slow. I was cautious, but hopeful. This time, I wasn't ignoring red flags or trying to fix someone. I was being honest with myself. It was healing to be loved without having to earn it, hide, or worry. For the first time in a long time, I believed that good love really did exist. When I told them everything from the Grubhub orders to the hearing on Valentine's Day, they didn't flinch. They said, "That sounds awful, but I'm really proud of you." I smiled. I had spent so long hiding the ugliest parts of my past, afraid that someone would see me as damaged. But now, I knew that surviving didn't make me damaged, made me strong. Telling my story wasn't about seeking pity, it was about reclaiming power, and the person who loved me saw me not as broken, but as brave. That's how I finally started to see myself too. We moved in together after a couple of years. Life became peaceful. We had quiet mornings with coffee and loud laughs over dinner. There were no games, no drama, no raised voices, just honesty. I often caught myself thinking how different it was from my past, and I was grateful. I still had hard days. Flashbacks came. Doubt tried to creep in. But this time, I had someone who held my hand through it. I also had myself stronger, wiser, and grounded. Healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about building a life that didn't feel like it anymore. Megan never came back into my life. I never tried to find her either. Some things are better left behind. The no-contact order eventually expired, but I never needed it again. We were two people on completely different paths. I wished her healing whatever that looked like for her, but I no longer carried her shadow with me. That part of my story had ended, and I had written so many new chapters since then. I had learned that closure doesn't always come from the other person. Sometimes, it comes from living a better life than the one they left you in. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far I've come. From a scared college student hiding behind a locked dorm door to a confident adult helping others with their own healing. It's been a journey, a painful one, but also a beautiful one. The things I thought would break me became the very things that made me strong. The betrayal, the fear, the lies, all of it became fuel. I turned it into something that mattered. I made peace with the past, and now I live with purpose. That's the real victory. Not revenge, just rising. Sometimes people ask me, if you could go back and erase it all, would you? I used to think yes, but now, I'm not so sure. Without all of that, I wouldn't have written the book. I wouldn't have met the people I did. I wouldn't have found this version of myself. So no, I wouldn't erase it. I'd just hug the younger me who went through all of it. I'd tell them, you make it. You don't just survive, you thrive. And I'd tell them one more thing, you're going to be okay. Better than okay. Now, when I speak or write, I always end with this. Your story is still being written. Because it's true. No matter where you are hurting, healing, or somewhere in between, there's more ahead. I thought my worst day would define me, but it didn't. It shaped me, but it didn't end me. And it won't end you either. So keep going. Keep writing, even if it's one page at a time. I did. And somehow, that page turned into a chapter. That chapter into a book. And that book into a life worth living. A story worth telling. Just like yours.